Veteran's Voice, stories that deserve to be heard, is proudly sponsored by Calling Gilbert, Wright & Carter.
Barron Mills, Major, United States Marine Corps, retired, and this is my story. I'm not one of those individuals that stumbled into the military or it became like a unexpected last option. I grew up as an Army brat. My dad was 30 years in the Army, retired colonel. I had an uncle who's retired colonel in the Army as well. Then an uncle retired Marine Corps colonel as well. My grandfather on my mom's side served World War II in the Army. My grandfather on my father's side, he lost an eye when he was young, so he couldn't serve in the military, but he served at Andrews Air Force Base as a mechanic the majority of his life. So I guess I always felt like the military was a calling to me. You know, I grew up on, when I was 4 or 5 years old, I was crawling around on helicopters and tanks on an Army base in Germany. As I grew up, stayed on bases and stuff, and just continued to be something that seemed to start, fitting in as maybe this is what I want to do in my life. But really, I jumped around. There were times where I was going to be a gynecologist, a nuclear engineer, a truck driver, until 86, like a lot of the people in the world. I saw Top Gun, and that hooked me. And for the next 4 or 5 years, all I wanted to be was a pilot. And that's what I had my eyes set on. And then, funny enough, found out later in high school that I couldn't see good enough. And that kind of took away the opportunity to be a pilot. So, but I was striving to get to a military college, one of the academies or something else. I went to the Virginia Military Institute, and you had to pick your ROTC as part of going to school there. And I knew a lot about the Army, not a lot about the Marine Corps, and I'd had a few things just in my last year of high school starting to lead me towards thinking about the Marine Corps. And so I picked it, and very glad I did. Never looked back. The best leadership I had when I was there at VMI was from others that were either already Marines themselves or were on the path to become Marines. And I was able to get a 2-year scholarship after my first year and a half at school there, and then to get a Marine Corps commission. So for me, becoming, in fact, it's kind of odd. I had a chemistry major as my undergrad in college. It was actually just the easiest way for me to get my degree based off of the requirements and stuff. To me, it was just a path, the best way to get to my degree, to get a commission to go into the military. So my eyes were set on that from the get-go. And extremely happy with that choice. When I went to the basic school for the Marine Corps in Quantico, Virginia, it grew on me even more. It was just, I loved every minute of it. There were times we were out in the field, you're getting rained on, working in the snow and freezing weather and stuff, and you just think, I can't believe I'm getting paid to do this, to be out here, to work on these tactics, working with these great men and women around you and so forth. So I wanted the military experience. I embraced it, and I'm very fortunate to have gotten that opportunity. I had a pretty good career overall. Had a chance to bounce around to start off in Quantico, Virginia is where all your training starts as an officer. Then with Camp Lejeune, North Carolina for about 2 years. And then Virginia Beach, Virginia. I was there for 3 years. And then back to school in Quantico for Expeditionary Warfare School. And then after that, I went out to the desert, 29 Palms, California, which there's not much else out there except for the Marine Corps base. There's Yucca Valley National Park, and that's where visitors come. But it's not by no means a metropolis or even a thriving area. It is the Marine Corps base out there. That's why we were there. And when we showed up there, so when I was going through Expeditionary Warfare School, that's when OIF 1, Operation Iraqi Freedom, started, and that was the invasion again of Iraq and the march up to Baghdad. So all of us in school, we thought we were missing out. We thought, well, they're all over there doing what we all signed up to do. I guess that's just the way it goes and stuff, And you've got that anxiety, that issue going on, because if you're not, that's what you signed up for, was to be part of part of that kind of mission, part of that action. If you're not part of it, for whatever reason, whether you're injured at school, timing's just not right, whatever the case is, you feel like you're not doing your part, you're missing out on something big. I remember more than a few senior officers coming in to talk to our class and letting us know, guys, don't worry, you're not missing anything because this thing's going to keep going even after we're initially done here. So they said that, but then when our class was over, that summer of 2003 was when we graduated from EWS, and then I moved out to Twin Mountain Palms. Everybody was coming back from Iraq. As far as everybody was concerned, it was over. I was going to a unit, 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines, that was going to deploy maybe once in the next 3 years, and that was going to be to Okinawa, Japan, on a normal rotation there. And then it was 3 or so months into being back in 3-7 that everybody realized, nope, this thing isn't over yet, and we're going to have to send forces back over. And so they put together one of the quickest, pre-deployment packages you've seen, and they crammed about 6 months of training that they could into a month, get everybody through this training, and then send us over. And in our case, most of the Marine units that went over, we call it OIF-2, were going over to replace Army units. Where my regiment went to, 7th Marines, the 3rd ACR was there for the Army, and I replaced them and started working in an area called Al-Qaim, Iraq, around the border, western border of Iraq and Syria. And so I was only a headquarters company commander. My job is to make sure that I was looking after the Marines, whose role was to support the rest of the battalion. So the cooks, communicators, intelligence guys, logisticians, the supply warehouse, mechanics, all those individuals fell underneath me. The frustrating thing as a headquarters company commander is you're told you're responsible for these people. Oh, by the way, you don't get a chance telling them what to do. I mean, that's what their section OICs are for, and that's what the battalion operations officer and XO are for. Is they're going to determine how these individuals need to support the battalion. So it's a weird role to have. So I was there primarily stuck in the responsibility of looking after our camp and taking a camp that was, when we got there, made to support about 400 or 500 soldiers, and to get it ramped up so it could support 2,000 Marines, soldiers, sailors, and probably some airmen thrown in there too. When it was all said and done, we had 2 battalions there, the continuous attachment of helicopters, Cobras and Hueys. We had H-60s there on the Army side, dust-off, the medevac guys. We had a forward surgical suite, Navy doctors and nurses. It's pretty, 2 square miles, pretty active area. And while we're doing that, we've got companies out doing combat operations in the area, and the one that was in the fight the most was Lima 37, which is right on the border there with Syria. So I know him for that point about 7-8 months. Company commander Rick Gannon. So I deployed, 3 times prior to OIF-2. I'd gone on a MU deployment, a Marine Expedition Unit, to the Mediterranean Sea. And, the most dangerous thing we did was spend about two weeks in Bosnia to put on a show of force with a bunch of other allied forces and take part in some UN stuff, checking on the weapons cache of local militia and stuff to make sure they were in compliance with UN regulations and so forth. Most of that deployment was just hopping around the Mediterranean, visiting different countries, Tunisia, Spain, Italy, Romania, and some others, to Greece, to interact with other allied nations and do security cooperation exercises and so forth. And my second deployment after that was to Haiti for 4 months, and we were there to be a security force for a combined task force that was providing humanitarian support to the Haitians. We're mainly there doing medical and dental support to locals, helping ensure engineers had safe, areas to build schools or wells, repair roads, and so forth. So it's a very benign deployment as well. And then briefly after 9/11, I'd gone down to Guantanamo Bay with with a platoon at the time to provide fence line security there. It's a standard mission that Marines are always down there doing. So did that for six weeks. Again, pretty benign thing. So when you did those deployments, it was with the excitement of I'm gonna go off and see new things, and I got no concerns about everybody coming home. And then when we went to OIF2, I remember just a different feeling, right? So at that point, I wasn't married in those first two deployments. Now I'm married, and as we're getting ready to go to OIF2, I find out my wife's pregnant too. So I'm going to OIF2, married now with a pregnant wife, and everybody knows this is gonna be a little different and stuff. And there was a little bit of a different mood. So back to being there on our deployment to Al-Qam, Iraq. So I just I'd go out every once in a while to visit some of the different areas around our area of operation, because I had Marines from my company out there supporting the other companies, and so I need to go check on them sometimes and find out what's going on. So I've been out there, and I had a chance to sit and talk for a couple hours with Rick Gannon, who was the company commander for Lima 37, and then within less than 48 hours, Rick's dead. And we'd had one casualty before that. It was somebody I didn't know in the battalion, and that's not to negate his death whatsoever, but it's just different when you know the person who's when it's a friendship and so forth. So that one was a punch in the gut. That day, the battalion lost 4 Marines, including Rick. We'd had a wake-up call a couple times before that with a death or two from IEDs, but this was a fight, and it really definitely woke the whole battalion up that we better be on our game, because we got an active enemy here. So go forward. We come back from that deployment, and 3-7 took plenty of casualties. By far, I wasn't the most hit unit at the time for that deployment and so forth. So then we go back. I get a chance to be a rifle company commander, and then in our workup to the next deployment, my company got selected to go to Yuma, Arizona, for about a month to support a big school that goes on there every year for aviators called WTI, Weapons Tactics Instructor Course. And so just before I went down to WTI to do it, I'd gotten over to Camp Pendleton, where the guy who had previously taken the company through that package was at with his company, and I wanted to get a turnover binder from him to make sure I was a little more prepared for supporting it. And he was company commander in 1st Battalion, 5th Marines, a guy named John Maloney, and he and I had interaction a couple years before when I had a platoon that was training up in Quantico. He was doing a package with that same week with some lieutenants, and it was something that my guys could benefit from, so I sent a few of my Marines over with him to take part in the training, just to keep them on with their with the skills that I couldn't do with our package, but they could get with John's package. So all right, so I go to see John and get his turnover and talk to him a little bit. But then I had another company commander in that same battalion. He and I got into school for 4 years at VMI together. We were the only 2 from our class at that time that then went to the basic school and became infantry officers. I had more classmates from VMI that went into my TBS class. Jamie and I were the only 2 that went on to become infantry officers out of our TBS class there that were VMI graduates. So I've known Jamie. So this is 2004. No, now we're into 2005, I think. So I think Jamie almost an entire decade at this point, heck, longer than that. So we had a chance to catch up. He had 2 daughters at that point. Again, I I just had my son while I was deployed overseas, and talked about family a little bit and everything, catching up. So then I'm at WTI supporting the training there, and as part of my battle rhythm, my daily activity. I spent some of the time out in the field with my Marines, making sure we're ready to go for the next evolution in the training. And then sometimes I go into the headquarters facility for the school and the classrooms to work with the instructors on what we're going to do next and check up on some things. So one of the instructors was looking online, checking Marine Corps communications, and he had no idea who knew who and stuff, and just shouted out, "Hey, anybody know Jamie Edge?" And I said, "Yeah." And he says, "Well, he's just killed." And and Rick's death had hit me some, but when I heard Jamie was killed, that one really, I didn't know what to do. Another guy I got an EWS with, because Jamie and I have been in the same EWS class. I went and found him real quick and just told him, because I had to say to somebody who I thought might have some of the same reaction and stuff. Because I just had to process that the guy I'd just seen month and a half prior, that I'd gone to his wedding. We'd done all kinds of stuff together, that he's gone now and stuff. So that's right. We all know it's part of it and so forth. But again, it's different when it's somebody that is a friend, somebody that you took for granted, that you'd see him again and you get to spend more time with him and so forth. So go for it a little bit again, and now my battalion 3-7 is going over to replace 1-5, and that same like the week before we went over there to do a pre-deployment site survey, where I went with my battalion commander and a couple others to get a lay of what was going on from 1-5 before we came over a few months later to replace him. John Maloney, the other company commander I interacted with just months prior, he'd just gotten killed as well, and you could see that the battalion was still reeling from some of those losses that they were taking over there. So for me, like, one of those things, like, yeah, I got it. A very small percentage of America serves in the military, and in the end is veterans. It's almost just a small percentage of the military that serves in real combat. There's plenty of thousands of individuals we send over to serve in combat areas, but the number that actually take part in combat operations is very small and very slim as well. And the number that are involved in engagements that are intense and life-changing is even smaller and so forth. I don't count myself in that group at all. I do proudly wear 2 combat action ribbons, one from Iraq, one from Afghanistan, but those were, I never fired my weapon once. Those were for rockets being fired at our base that landed kind of close, for walking up on an IED that we recognized in times that scoot back and let it be detonated later on, rolling over the top of a mine that my vehicle, nothing happened, but the vehicle behind me, it exploded on. And luckily, just maybe some concussions out of that. Nobody got any major physical damage. And then, being over in Afghanistan, being in a vehicle that drove over the top of my mine and got blown up, and tires went 100 yards each direction. Tires that weigh hundreds of pounds, flying like the distance of a football field. Coming out of that with everybody saying, "Hey, you all right?" "Yeah, I'm good." And so that's my combat experience, and I find it very docile compared to the guys I know who went through some pretty bad stuff and everything. So it's kind of what I'm getting at with some of this is so there can be a guilt, right? There can be a guilt that maybe you didn't do enough. There can be a guilt that a friend died and you couldn't do anything about it. and stuff. So I don't, like some individuals wrestle with stuff every day. I don't. But this stuff pops in my head often enough. Um, and it pops in because I'm gonna remind myself why I should be feel lucky on days I am able to, enjoy being with my family, um, and to and just appreciate what you have. I'm always striving for more. I want a lot more in life, for me and my family and others. But sometimes you just gotta remember you got it pretty good. It could be a lot worse. It could always be a lot worse. So that's some of that. So real quick though, back to trying to wrap up some of my career stuff. When 3-7 goes back over for our second deployment, I actually got split out and sent to be a team leader for a transition team. So these were the teams that were 10 to 15 man teams of all services: Army, Navy, Marine Corps, even some Air Force here and there. Going over to train police, Army. We had lawyers training, the judicial system in Iraq and so forth. So I got split out for that, and that was another unique experience. I basically, we were in Ramadi, Iraq, and they flew us to Fallujah. We met up with some equipment there, and then they basically said, "Hey, you guys need to make yourselves over to a place called Taji, which is just north of Baghdad, and then from there, you get told where to go." And so we did that. It was just pretty much, our three. Well, we had 9. So I had a team with 3 vehicles, total of 11 of us, and then we had 2 Army teams with us, each about 11 or 12 personnel. They had their 3 vehicles, so we had our little 9-vehicle convoy. So we swung over to Taji, learned what to do there, got some good training that we hadn't gotten to, prior to then, and then we got told, "Hey, go to this place down south called Diwania," and all we knew was a point on the map, and that was about all. That's really all we knew. So we got on the road, and I just remember you given all these nets, all these different radio frequencies that you're supposed to be able to contact people on. They call it the sheriff, or you're rolling through other individual units, areas of operation, and you should be able to contact them. We couldn't raise anybody on our radio, so I just remember rolling through the main MSR, the main highway going south past Baghdad and stuff, and we're going up, we're on underpasses, and the overpasses have tanks and rallies on them, and we can't contact anybody, so we're just thinking, well, hopefully they realize that we're U.S. and they don't shoot us up. And we did. We got there just fine, and had the experience of building a 3,000-man Iraqi brigade, which was like so many things over there, just unique in itself. Dozens of stories to tell out of that. One of the unique things was I had to be the guy to go down and receive all the new recruits on the Iraqi side as they were coming to our gate, and they'd all show up with paperwork. And the day before, I would be given paperwork from the U.S. side saying, "Hey, here's everybody you're gonna bring in to the brigade." And so when these groups of Iraqis just show up to say, "Hey, we're here to join the Army," I'd have to marry up the rosters. And I'd say 20 to 30% of the people showing up were not on the roster. What had happened in most cases was they had paid somebody a bunch of money to get brought into the Iraqi Army because it was a good way to get paid to take care of your family there, and it was bogus. It was a scam. And I had to. And these guys are telling me, "Hey, I just traveled 2 days from Mosul, which is in the far north, and I'm down almost in the far southeast of Iraq. And all I can do is look them in the face and say, 'Sorry, you got screwed. You can't stay here. See ya,' and stuff." So we formed this 3,000-man brigade, made up about a 4 to 5 week training package for them that we working with some Iraqi instructors, put them through, and then we deployed them out to go do combat operations alongside Marines, and we actually deployed back to Al-Qaim, Iraq, which was where I'd been the first deployment that I'd been there. And it was really interesting to see was the improvements that had happened there. Just a month and a half before we'd gone out there, the battalion there at the time, 3rd Battalion, 6th Marines, had married up with a battalion that was kind of floating around the area, 2nd Battalion, 1st Marines, and they'd done a full sweep through the area and really cleaned things up. And it wasn't just that they swept through to get rid of enemy fighters and get rid of weapons caches and stuff. It was that they were able to, with the force they had, they were able to remain behind forces to set up now platoon-size patrol bases that were always there, and just made a world of difference. But one of the things I found out was another guy I'd gone to UWS with, I met there, huge guy. I mean, stood 6'3" or so, easy 240, 250. He'd been a collegiate wrestler at Ohio State, a guy named Ray Mendoza, and he'd gotten killed. It was one of those, like, what are you going to do about this? They had just come up with their operations plan for the next phase of the clear operation, and so he steps off to go start leading his company. He just happened to step on a mine, and it killed instantly right there. So it's, it's just one of those. Just you never know what's going to happen and when. So that was one of the. As I look back on that deployment, we never had any real activity for my MIT team, my military transition team, as far as any kind of engagements. Right. We drive by areas that just hours before, hours after, they're being ambushed at. That we knew there were dangers in the area. One of the Marine vehicles with the company we're working with had hit a triple stack IED. Luckily, everybody got out of it, but it completely burned up the vehicle. You're driving by that the day after it happened, wondering, okay, where are the other ones at, and so forth. But I'm probably making it sound like it's more difficult than it's not. Like you've been trained from the time you came in the Marine Corps. This is what you've signed up to do. This is what your purpose is, and you just keep doing it every day. And if you have in the back of your mind something's going to happen to one of us, then you're going to be hesitant, and you can't be hesitant. So you have to take the right steps to plan as well as possible to mitigate any risk, maybe even possibly completely avoid risk, but it's almost impossible to do that. So you just do it. So that 2nd deployment ended actually pretty well for us. My whole team was able to come back. But that's another one of those. I had a good kid engineer on my team named Corporal Galvin, and he volunteered to go right back over after that deployment was over with another unit, and he was killed during that deployment. So it's it's one of those things I always want to make sure I don't forget about. So then fast forward after that exposure in 3-7, went back to Quantico, Virginia, had a great job for 3 years as the operations officer for it's called Weapons Training Battalion, and we train dynamic entry, people who breach, whether they deal with explosives, shotguns, or other mechanical means. We taught snipers for the Marine Corps. We taught people how to shoot rifles and pistols. We taught people how to use foreign weapons. Now that we were more involved with other countries that were using AK-47s and RPKs and the like. And we even, one of the unique things there was they have something called a precision weapons section that actually makes sniper rifles, designated marksmanship rifles, and a special kind of a pistol for the Marine Corps. So that was really a great experience. We had our second child, my daughter, during that time at Quantico. And then I went back down to Camp Lejeune, where I started my Marine Corps career in the Marine Forces at. And I had a chance to deploy for a year to Afghanistan on a staff for a Marine regiment. And we lost, one of the guys we had there, Staff Sergeant Justice Bartelt. He'd been one of my instructors, Weapons Training Battalion, and then was with us on the regimental staff. And again, you're sitting around joking and talking about things one day, and then he went off to an area called Sengen that was there in Afghanistan in Helmand Province. It was absolutely the heaviest fighting area, the heaviest casualties that the Marine Corps experienced during its his last years in full force in Afghanistan, and he was killed there by an IED. We had a master sergeant who was an EOD technician that got killed by an IED as well. So, you know, the life of a staff officer is pretty rudimentary. I mean, you spend most of your day pushing files on a computer and stuff, waiting for the opportunity to go out on some kind of patrol or to visit, you know, some unit out there and stuff, just so you can feel like you're a little bit closer to the action, like you're making more of an impact and so forth. Because again, if you feel like you've got all this to offer, and if you're and sometimes all you're asked to do is, hey, we just need you to sit there in that office and crank out paperwork so that everybody else can get done what they need to get done for the fight out there. So sometimes that's your role. And that's, I talk about being a platoon commander was by far the greatest job I had. It's just the most fun, the most rewarding, most impactful to me. When you become a staff officer, which is basically what you are if you're a officer in the Marine Corps, the second half of your career is by far being a staff officer. It's not glamorous, but you know you're part of the overall solution. You know you're helping to make a difference for other people, so that's what helps driving stuff. So when I was there in 2nd Marines, I was getting close to hitting 14, 15 years in the Marine Corps, and people are starting planting seeds with me that you need to have a plan for when you get out of the Marine Corps. And because just being an infantry officer or just being an artillery officer or whatever, that doesn't get you much, because there's plenty of you out there. There's plenty of people who can say they've led people, they've managed people. So what makes you different? So I started learning about acquisitions, which is a different element of the military for procuring new equipment or getting equipment upgraded and so forth. And I'd had a run-in with a retired colonel when I was in Quantico Weapons Training Battalion, and our dialogue was, he said, hey, I was infantry officer and then I became a finance officer. And I was like, why the heck would you do that? He said, well, I wanted a job when I got out of the Marine Corps. And that sat with me. I was like, all right, it makes some sense now that I'm starting to learn more. And so back when I was in 2nd Marines, getting ready to leave Afghanistan, every 2 or 3 years, it's time for you to move again, and you have somebody called the monitor who's responsible for making sure that all the movers are assigned in the best place that the Marine Corps needs them. So there was a job here in Orlando with an organization called PM Traces, Program Manager Training Systems. And they oversee procurement and sustainment for ground training systems, basically everything other than aircraft systems for the Marine Corps. And I played my cards right, and I got sent down here in 2011. And those next 3 years were great as far as giving me a chance to start setting myself up for success, or at least opportunities post-military career. So I got a chance to have hands-on experience leading project teams for developing new capabilities for the Marine Corps. I got a free master's out of it. I got certified as an acquisition professional out of it. So it was all good stuff. And I thought I was just going to be able to, I knew I was going to be retiring in around May of 2016. I thought I was going to be able to ride out another, less than 2 years at PM Traces. But that's not how the Marine Corps works. The Marine Corps says we need bodies in certain places. And so when I had a little less than 2 years ago, they said, hey, we're going to reassign you down to Marine Forces South in Miami. It's about 3.5 hours from here if traffic is good. So I left my family in place, and I just went back and forth every weekend, except for the occasional times I was doing trips, because about 20 months, maybe 22 months with Marine Forces South. I was gone 5 months at a time, mainly down to South America for some trips, but also to Texas or Virginia to meet up with other elements of the military that I needed to do some planning with and so forth. When I got sent down there, I thought this is terrible. Like, I should just be back in Orlando. with my family all the time, just doing this work I was doing for PM Traces. But as I look back on it now, it was actually really good. It gave me a chance to, it was really an easier job I was handed. So it gave me more time to myself to start reflecting on what's next for me after my Marine Corps career is over. It gave me a chance to see a new perspective on the Marine Corps and the military, to make new contacts. So it was good. So I probably left with that. If I'd stayed at PM Traces, I probably would have been a little more burnt out when my 20 years was up. And being at Marine Forces South, actually, I was a little bit more rested. So that was good. And so I retired in May of 2016 after 20 years. And it's not something I wanted to have happen. It was the Marine Corps said, it's your time to get out. And so I did, somewhat begrudgingly. I absolutely still miss being a Marine regularly. There's certain parts you don't miss, but there's so much of it that you do. And but eventually it sets in, hey, you're not going back in. You gotta focus on what's ahead of you here. And so that's what I've been trying to start doing with my time. I got a good job, a transition job out of the Marine Corps. I was a program manager, supporting the Marine Corps again, actually supporting PM Traces again. So it was good because I was working with people I know, I was working with systems I know. It was just a little bit different role than I had before. And I learned something out of it. I got some personal growth out of it. But 6 or 7 months into it, I knew, hey, I can't. This isn't the path I want to stay on. I want to start pursuing things on my own as a business owner, and also want to make sure I have time, more flexibility in my time, to give really to the veterans community around Central Florida. And so that's what I've been doing over the past months, is continually trying to connect myself more and more to all the great resources, organizations, opportunities around Central Florida, and seeing how I can start making an impact. Because we got tens of thousands of veterans here, but we're in pockets. We're not all well connected in the one homogeneous community. You got pockets by the services that are all around UCF Research Park because of DoD acquisitions. You've got other pockets of individuals that maybe had a role here in the past with reserve duty or recruiting duty. And you've got the other individuals, pockets of, they're in Central Florida because of a family background usually. Either they themselves are native from the area, or their spouses are. And so they come back here. And we're all here, but we're disjointed, and we need to come together. And that's why I'm much more involved and getting myself involved with organizations like Camaraderie Foundation, Mission United, who's trying to become the central hub for connecting veterans with resources in the area. Some of the professional organizations like the First Marine Division Association, Central Florida Marine Corps Foundation, the Navy League. There's lots of great people and organizations out there that want to make a difference, but you got to connect the people who can make a difference with the people that need a difference made. And I think that's where we keep continuing to have a gap in communication and connection. So that's absolutely a big part of my passion and my focus going forward here in these coming years is to try to help be a connector for that in the area. I gave some of my thoughts about losing friends and stuff, but I was never involved in a traumatic incident. So I'm not one of those that has ever felt that I need to seek help for any mental stuff. So I have a hard time completely connecting with the service members that do. You kind of have to have experienced the same thing to fully connect with other individuals, which is why I think it's one of the reasons why so many veterans have a hard time voicing that they need help or voicing that they have issues, is because you're only comfortable a lot of times turning to somebody else that has the same experience and can kind of you properly empathize and so forth. And either you don't want to put your own burden on your family sometimes, or you just don't think they can understand. But that's part of it. So if you got if you're a veteran or even a family member who's got issues coping with events, one of the key, you're not alone, and so you need to get out and ask for help. And there's plenty of places that do that. The veterans I'm interacted with the most are the ones that are really they've transitioned out of they're either just now transitioned out of the military, or they already transitioned out, but they're still trying to figure out and get a foothold on what their life should be next and stuff. And so and I talk about my job as a program manager over the past little more than a year. The best thing I had happen to me at that job was a chance to hire other people. And in a year period, I had about 18 new hires, and I was able to hire veterans for about 12 of those positions. And but for everybody I hired, I probably turned 2 or 3 other veterans I interviewed away, and probably another 10 veterans who I never even got to interview on because they didn't look like they were a good match. They never even got through to the interview process and so forth. So I'm very much involved in that. Like, how do we get veterans better set up to get the opportunities they need professionally, whether it's the right kind of job with the right company or them setting up their own company and so forth. And I know there's other veterans I'm starting to meet up with that have the same focus as far as let's get more veterans to become entrepreneurs and just start things on their own, because you've learned through these years, whether you just did 4 years or 20 or 30 years, you came away with an incredible amount of leadership experience, knowledge, management, discipline, ability to put processes and plans in place. You've got everything it takes to run a business. So why shouldn't you go for it? But I think what every veteran needs to get better at and realize is, number one, it's two key things for people transitioning: networking and getting mentored. So the networking piece, so like real estate's location. I think professionally advancing yourself in life is networking. You don't know where that next opportunity is going to come from. You don't know where the perfect partner for a business venture or the dream job of your life is going to come from. So just get yourself out there and connect to as many people as you can. To that networking, more opportunities will come open. And that is something that, it's not, two things are very unnatural for veterans. And that's reaching out to people and kind of putting yourself out there to meet them for the first time. And it's also selling yourself. Like when you're in the military, your job is to subvert yourself to the team and to the mission. That is what comes first, and you need to be ready to sacrifice yourself in order to make sure that your buddies make it and that the mission gets accomplished. So when it comes to getting out in the civilian world, well, in the end, it can still be like that with a good team and company. In order to get in there, you got to sell yourself first, and that's just completely unnatural for most veterans. You got to learn to become comfortable with saying who I am and what I bring, and I'm the one you got to hire. I'm the one you need to bring on board. So through networking, you can start getting those opportunities, and through getting a mentor. And a mentor can help you gain access to more opportunities. A mentor can help you get that self-confidence that you need. A mentor can help you learn how to sell yourself. So that's one of those things, even I didn't realize it until later in my Marine Corps career, that I failed to do as a Marine officer, was to network better within the Corps and get more mentors. I'd use certain commanding officers as a mentor, but I never really reached outside of my chain of command and so forth. And I realize now that a lot of my peers or other people I looked up to who were being successful and getting where they wanted to, they were doing that. They were getting a wider network of senior officers and senior enlisted to interact with, and they were tapping into to more mentors to really help them make the right decisions for what was whether it was a current task they were trying to address, or it was the next place they should go in their career. So I finally realized that getting out of the Marine Corps, and I've gotten myself. I got a mentor through the American Corporate Partners opportunity, acp-usa.org. I've had that same mentor now for about 2 years, and she's kind of like a life coach when we talk. I was able to get 2 mentors during my first year out through the Camaraderie Foundation's Mentor Leadership Program, and I still stay in touch with those 2. And now, I didn't take advantage of it as a mentee, but there's a really good nationwide movement organization called Veterati at veterati.com, and you can go on there and get a mentor basically anywhere in the U.S., any possible line of work or profession, business that you can think of. So I signed on about a month ago to be a mentor on that and so forth. But there's so many things to navigate in order to start being successful in your post-military career. Don't do any of it alone. So reach out to others, get better networked, and get a mentor that'll help you achieve your goals much sooner than you could on your own or just with your own devices.